Hello, welcome to this discussion in Geography 4230 and 5230. I am Murray Rice, and today we're talking about what our course is about. So we're definitely in introductory mode. We're thinking about the nature of location intelligence, what it is, what it means, why it's important. So it's important right from the very start to recall and understand that the course that we're dealing with here is very important. There is a need for this course, and that need really comes from a lack of application on the part of businesses and business leaders and leaders in other areas of life to really implement and understand the importance of geography and geographic analysis. So the focus of this course is applying geographic ideas and methods to solve or support in real-world decision-making, solve real-world problems. People have known for a long time that geography is indeed important and should be taken into account in decision-making, but the issue has always been that how do you do that? Especially when you're talking about really big problems like we can deal with today, but in the past they were really hard to deal with without advanced technology, and now we've got that. So part of the rationale here, I think if you're going to solidify this in your own mind, is just thinking a little bit about the kinds of applications of geography to business. In what way can geography provide a service to business leaders, also nonprofit leaders, government leaders, that kind of thing? Are there obvious applications? And so what is the relevance? So I'd really like you to spend some time thinking about that on your own, thinking about why location matters in the running of a business, whether that's Walmart or Amazon or maybe Apple, Google, all sorts of companies, ExxonMobil. Why do they care about geography? So let me leave that question with you, and we'll keep on going past this, but think about particular kinds of applications as much as you can. So maybe just to get our thinking going here a little bit, let's think about a really basic example that people could have imagined a long time ago. Simple application of mapping where your customers are. You've got a business, and let's say it's a very simple business. It's in one location and you serve customers. Where are the customers? So simple application, take a list of people who are your customers or your clients and map that list in some way, and the hope would be to uncover location patterns. So from this simple description, I think you can see that people could have, and indeed did, visualize this kind of application long ago. But doing it and doing it well and doing it in a way like we would expect today is a different story. We have computer technology, but how realistic is it to do this kind of thing without computer technology? So think about if you have an address list. If you don't have computer technology, being able to look up the addresses, the cities, maybe the street address, the states, the countries, and putting pins in the right locations. If you have a list that's much longer than 10 or 20, if you have 100, if you have 500, if you have 1,000, if you have 10,000 customers, that's a pretty big job. And then what about updating the map? Can you think about that? What if you add new people, new customers, or existing customers move, or they're not your customer anymore? How do you update that when you basically just have a physical map on the wall with these pins stuck into it? That's pretty challenging right there. So even with that difficulty, though, I think we should be careful to say that didn't mean that it didn't happen, that this kind of application didn't happen before. And so there's plenty of examples of this. So even today, so here's one that I saw not long ago at a business in Dallas, a home goods store in Dallas. Round the world, where are you from? Drop a pin. And so they had a container of pins, and you were welcome to put in a pin where you came from. And so you could see on the world map where customers for this store came from. Question for you, is the pin map actually useful for anyone? Could they use that for decision making of any kind? What kind of decision making would that support? think at this level, at a global map, I think it's more kind of interest than anything else. But that doesn't mean that other maps weren't created that actually did have importance. So an early and very well-known example, Dr. John Snow's 1854 dot map of the spread of disease in a neighborhood in London. And so you can see the key insight here is a grouping of people, of occasions for disease incidents around a water pump, and they were able to use this map to say, you know, it kind of looks like maybe that water pump is associated with the spread of the disease, and maybe there's something wrong with the sanitation with the water pump that's caused that. And that was kind of the whole lead in to medical geography and epidemiology. So the value of that simple kind of analysis, even with that, is you can put things together. You can put together disease incidents and environmental factors, and you can see if you can draw a conclusion. You can make a statement about that. And so this kind of map on its own was a huge step in the development of public health and its connection with geography. So not only for public health, but for other applications as well. This is a great example of just how powerful geographic insight can be. But true, we should also state that this was not done a lot because it was difficult. Locating people and putting dots on the map where the people were is hard. And so again, coming back to large complex data sets is a big deal. But other people did it as well. So it wasn't only Dr. John Snow. There's actually, here's one from about the same era, map of England shaded to show the prevalence of cholera, and it represents a geographic distribution. And this is really advanced for that time. Another example from around that time, again, cholera. So you can see disease is a particularly prominent application here in early geographic thinking and representing, trying to make decisions based on that. And there's patterns on this map that enable them to think about this. And one more here, actually from 1854, thinking about that same data set, just another way of representing on a street front basis how many people at a given address. So representing that with a bar chart, kind of a spatial or a map-based bar chart, kind of an interesting way to get at it. Again, enabling analysis of pattern. So what makes the difference for us today? We don't need to do those kind of physical representations. We have GIS. We have geographic information systems that enable us to automate the production of maps like this. So here's a customer map for a real world business in a real city. And this is the kind of thing where Dr. John Snow would have taken hours and hours, and we can just give an Excel database to our GIS, and within seconds we've got a display like this. And not only that, but we can do a further analysis. We could take the percentage of each block or each community, and we can see what percentage of the neighborhood population is represented by customers. And so you can see high areas and low areas. And again, doing this in Dr. John Snow's time, 1854, would be really a huge job. But for us today, we have databases and our GIS systems, and they work so well for us to be able to do this kind of analysis in seconds rather than hours or days. So the steps that would be necessary, well, just think about that. Going from a dot map that locates where the customers are, this map really fundamentally compares with the overall population. So you have to have population data put together with count data for customers by block or by neighborhood, and that's a lot of work. That's a lot of complexity. So that really points to the value of GIS as powerful. It's a powerful tool, and we can identify at least a couple of ways here. So in terms of analysis, data-driven insights, it'd be really impossible to uncover those kind of data insights in any way except through mapping it. The things that we're talking about with locations and customers and neighborhood and environmental factors, we really need a map to allow us to draw key conclusions. So the analytical side is important, and that leads really to communication. If we do the analysis well, if we design our maps well, then they tell a story that's powerful, that can be told in no other way. And so that's also an important ingredient of application. So let's watch a video case study now that illustrates what we're talking about in a very modern context and in a very local context. CoServe is Denton County's local electrical utility, and they were the feature in an Esri video just talking about application of GIS. And so here it is. Oh, and before we get to the video, one thing I'd like you to do as we watch, note the major ways in which CoServe and its customers benefit from use of geospatial data technologies, the GIS. What's the benefit? Why would they want to do this? So let's watch.
As one of the largest electric cooperatives in the nation, serving in 6 counties north of Dallas and Fort Worth, our growth has been phenomenal. It's a little bit scary because we're adding so many customers and so much load annually that if we didn't have GIS system, I don't know how we would keep up.
The roads are always growing and changing, and it's a difficult task for everyone to keep up with the massive growth. But with ArcGIS Online, you're getting information immediately in your hands, right when it's updated in our GIS system in real time.
It's unacceptable to think that we're not going to serve that growth, because the consequences of that are that we don't keep the lights on.
Well, when I first come to work here, we had these small orange map books with, I guess, all of our system pretty much drew out on each page. You had a little old grid card. You'd have to grid it all out and try to find the right location out in the field. You don't have any idea where the transformers are. And if they wasn't very reliable, no telling where you'd wind up at.
I would say the instant wins of deploying ArcGIS Online were reliability for our field crews and the ability to access the information quickly. They don't have to hope that they have the right information or that the information they have is outdated. The tools are just right on your phone or on your tablet or on your laptop or wherever you want to do your work from.
Sometimes we're driving out, we're looking at lines to verify that the line is what it says it is. And it's great just to be able to mobily go out and verify for that information. We can be proactive in fixing some of the voltage issues, fixing some of the power quality issues, and catching any capacity deficits at least 5 years before we actually have them. The accuracy of the information is getting better and better every year, which cuts down our time and the cost goes down.
Our first major project using ArcGIS Online was our Streetlight inventory pilot.
Okay, we're over on Indigo Drive, fixing to set up here on Sedalia.
Trying to take any inventory of any type at CoServe is a very difficult project, and it allowed us to see the feasibility of ArcGIS Online to support a project very large in scope and adapt to the high growth in our territory. We expected to map 2 subdivisions in a month, but we were able to beat that by 150%. After the Streetlight project, we moved on to a more mission-critical job using ArcGIS Online to deal with power outages.
Yeah, we do have a broke pole just north of Denton.
We found we could respond much faster than ever before.
I believe we have a crew real close to there. Should have somebody on there in 15 minutes. The guys out in the field can see the same thing, and the guys in dispatch see. They'll be looking at their online map so they can be sure they're set up the right switch.
For our field crews, it changes their life. Now that we knew how well ArcGIS Online could handle our data, we started to deploy it company-wide.
We can bring information into our engineering analysis tool, and it allows us to accurately start our planning.
It brings an opportunity to engage customer service where they can now look up very quickly and easily, do we serve this area or can this member buy service from us? The technology is simple to set up and use. It's easy to bring in new folks that have never used GIS.
You'll see gains in productivity, you'll see cost reductions, you'll see manual processes get automated. So it really does become kind of a cornerstone of everything that you'll do.
Dallas is growing by leaps and bounds, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. What gets me excited about ArcGIS is just the fact we're able to stay on top of the growth.
Once you make this technology available, people will latch onto it, and once they see it, the light bulb comes on for them. And so we're seeing an entirely different way of doing business in the future.
So I hope that video makes clear for all of us that technology is central to this whole area of application. And it's been a long-term effort. It's been a lot of people contributing over a long time to develop the software, the technology, the infrastructure in order to be able to do that kind of job. So here, I just want to get at an illustration of the timeline of how this technology has developed in North America for the benefit of the world. So beginning in the 60s, 1960s, just to be clear, and 1970s, was the era of computer cartography, the birth of the technology. And this man, Roger Tomlinson, a Canadian, was credited universally as being the father of GIS for the work he did for the government of Canada in the 1960s. And so if you think about that, the work that he did was foundational for everyone else going after him. And so that's a pretty big deal, that he came up with insights, being able to think about computers and cartography and geographic analysis and combining it all together. And this made him a really important person. So following on his early applications in government, GIS was mostly a government technology and academia. It certainly developed and people saw applications outside of there, but it didn't really reach its true potential in terms of migrating into applications outside of government and academia for quite some time. So the beginning in the 1960s and 70s, academic and government and people just trying to get to a bit of an understanding what this thing is. And so this is the kind of technology we're talking about, output, using different kinds of letters and symbols to symbolize through dark and lighter areas a map. So here's a map of Connecticut. Crude by modern standards. We would not produce this kind of map today, but I think if you look at that, you can see, oh yeah, there's a pattern there that's represented. And so that's compelling. That's really the beginning of being able to represent custom, computerized, data-driven mapping. So that's a step along the way. And then from there, from the 60s and 70s into the 80s and 90s, people started to see, well, if government can use it to its benefit, what else can happen with GIS? And so this is actually an article about a company called Denton that you might not have heard of or know about, but today you've definitely heard of them. They're known as Target today. And so Target was one of the early adopters of GIS technology. And actually the man illustrated in the picture here is a good friend of mine who started up with Denton Target in the Minneapolis area, and he's now living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he was a leader in the development of GIS technology for many businesses. He started with Target, but he ended up his career not too long ago with JCPenney. So that kind of a process, that kind of person, being able to see the power of GIS and being able to implement it. And, you know, the kind of quote that came out of this 1987 Minneapolis St. Paul City Business Journal story, analysts study existing and potential markets and recommend sites for new stores. Back in the 80s, that was cutting edge. Like, people hadn't even thought about that. Those are basic things today. But when you think about it coming from a government background, this is a big step. Just understanding, well, there are other applications that businesses could think about as well. So getting into the late 1980s, early 1990s, Fortune magazine, well-known business publication, starting to talk about it, mapping for dollars, just thinking about, well, what's the benefit, trying to understand that. Late 1990s, Business Geographics magazine, dedicated to business geography, again, kind of publishing, well, what are the applications, getting the word out about that. And by the 2000s, this is approaching something that we would recognize. GIS, geovisualization, doing new things that people had not imagined before. And so here's the release. This is the initial release. This is the first time that Google Maps was used, came into an existence. And so looking at directions for a highway project. And that was essentially the big power that people initially saw in Google Maps. A bit of a toy, a bit of a, well, you could use it for trips, find your way, but what could business do with it? Not clear at that point. But by the 2010s, the 2020s, mobile technology, Google Maps is still a part of that. Other technologies, think about Uber, think about GasBuddy. I mean, they exist because location awareness is built into the technologies. And so that's where we've come. We've come a long way from those initial kind of character-based density maps of the 1960s and thinking about forestry and government services only. And now we're into so many applications. So this is pretty exciting. So what location-enabled or location-aware applications do you use? I bet you've got a few. Probably Google Maps is in the mix or something like it, Waze, others. But what else do we gain by having a location awareness on our phone? That is something worth considering. So 2010s and on, we've got all sorts of advanced capabilities to be able to represent patterns and understand things, analyze geographies of markets and cities and issues like pollution, and we can create maps like this that represent things really well in terms of hotspots or concentrations of activities along the way. So I guess I'd just ask you, as we're talking here, what picture do you have now, given the development that we've had? Like, maybe you've been able to work in GIS before, maybe not. I think we probably have a diverse class here. Some people with some skills and some experience, maybe some others not. But, you know, just based on whatever experience you have and whatever you've been able to pick up from our discussion so far, I would challenge you to just think about what the picture is that you have now of GIS and its relationship to business. Is it something that's a toy, or is it something that's real? Could we just think of it as computer cartography or computer map making, or is it more than just making a map for a business? Here's a map of Denton. Here's a map of Texas. Maybe it's got locations of gas stations on it, or whatever we're concerned with. How far does it go? What are the applications? So all of that is important. Coming to grips with what this class is about. Well, now I'd like to turn and talk a little bit about the project for our class. So a little bit to introduce the course and the semester overall, but I also want to deal with the project that we're dealing with, our major semester project in location intelligence. So it's a real-world analysis, and it's working with a company called Vicaro out of Fort Worth. So Have you heard of them before? You may have. They're big, they're growing, but I could also see many people not hearing of them at all because they're not like Apple. They're not like Exxon or Kroger or anything like that. They are a company that doesn't work with individual consumers, really. They work with other businesses. And so what they're doing when we talk about real estate development, they develop all sorts of different kinds of real estate uses. And they are crucially interested in understanding geography. And that makes them a great partner for us in our term project, semester project this year. So here's a little illustration from their website. I encourage you to go to their website and have a look through, but here's a little bit of information from vaqueroventures.com where you can read up and understand their connection to geography. Just a little introduction for our purposes now, and we'll learn more about them as we go along. I think it's important, though. We need to understand who they are and what they need from geography as we think about some problems we can help them with in our semester project. So Vaquero works in an extremely diverse set of markets and industries, all sorts of different activities. Here's a map by state of their activities. So you can see they're in most states across the country, 37 states out of 50, of course, 625 projects since 2010, $1.2 billion in value that they've worked on. So they're growing. I'm sure that dollar value is going to be skyrocketing as they do more and more. They're really good. They're really ambitious. But that's where they're at right now. And so let's just think about the kinds of projects they've done. They've worked in the retail industry with companies like O'Reilly Auto Parts, Panera Bread. That's pretty exciting. Industrial uses with warehousing, strip malls, small business, storage facilities, food solutions. So here again, warehousing, that kind of thing. Office projects. So they're into office land uses as well. So looks like from the representation here, probably not the big downtown skyscrapers, but important offices in other parts of the city. They're involved with that, developing them, siting them, where is a good location for those kinds of real estate projects. And then another one worth mentioning, where actually they've got a lot of competition, but they're doing really well as well. Medical projects, thinking about clinics and doctors and healthcare services. And so they're thinking about assessing markets and helping medical companies, healthcare companies to site their projects in appropriate ways so that they serve people. So the Business GIS team from Vaquero is interested in some input from us. So I think this is a really unique opportunity, and that they are thinking about a lot of real estate development opportunities as they go along. And so in order to sort through them, which are the ones they should do, which ones should they not do, if they do them, where should they go, that's the kind of input that they're looking for. So put this simply in terms of our perspective here. I'd really like you, and I think you would benefit from this most from a class perspective, if you treat this project like you're serving a professional client, because that's who they are. They're professional. They're actually using this information, and that's pretty important. All right, class, let's move along and have a look at something a little different here, the details of the project that you will be doing this semester. You'll have one major project that you'll be working on, and I want to tell you about it right from the start so that you've got a good idea of where to go to finish it. At least that's the hope. So let's talk about this a little bit. It's a real-world GIS analysis for a company called Vaquero Ventures of Fort Worth, Texas. And so I'm anticipating some of you have heard of Vaquero and others have not. And either way is fine. Vaquero is a company that I probably wouldn't be too surprised if I found out that you had not heard of them before. They don't really deal with the public. They're more of an investment vehicle. So their primary involvement would be with other companies such as retailers or service companies or industrial companies, clients who need retail space or office space or something of that nature. So that's what we're talking about with Vaquero there. So they are a fast-growing company. I guess that's something to emphasize. They're growing, they're doing extremely well, and so it's our privilege really to work with them on something that's pretty interesting and exciting. So a little bit more background on Vaquero. Here's the front of their website. Experience that outperforms, so you can see the Western theme. Real estate represented there, which is central to everything that they're doing. A lot of information on their website, so I'd advise you have a look, since we'll be working with these people over the next few months. VaqueroVentures.com. Have a look and see what you can find out about them. They work in an extremely diverse set of markets and industries. It's something that you should see right away. So across the country, at least 37 out of 50 states. I was hearing today actually it's more than that, but that's the states they were in as of a few months ago. You could see that they've done a lot of work right from ocean to ocean. Pretty impressive stuff. 625 projects as of a few months ago, 37 states, $1.2 billion in value of projects that they've been doing. So a lot of big stuff that they've been working on. Retail projects are part of the portfolio for them. The 7-Elevens, the O'Reilly Auto Parts, the Panera Breads of the world, that kind of thing. And then as well, industrial projects. So you can see a little different. Baking company, different kinds of service businesses, warehousing, different kinds of industry. Office projects, so office space, some pretty nice office space for a small to mid-sized company we could see represented here. Different kinds of office space that's been developed by them. Medical projects, clinics, medical facilities of different kinds, urgent care, that kind of thing. So that's Vaquero just briefly. Again, I would advise you to have a look at Vaquero in particular and just see what else you can find out from their website and other sources as well. Business GIS team there wants your outside input. That's something that's really valuable to them. Get a view that's not from the people who've been thinking about this stuff for a long time. What about some fresh perspectives from outside? That's what they're after primarily here. And so advice to you, if you're trying to do well on this project, and I sure hope you are, simple advice: treat the project like you're serving a professional client with real goals and real needs that matter, because in reality that's true. Vaquero does care about doing a good job themselves, and so they want to get a good project from you in terms of sound advice and analysis that we can provide based on the things that you'll be learning in this class. So treat it very professionally and things will go well. So what is the project? That's a great question to ask at this point. So let's answer it. The project, we're supporting Vaquero's analysis of development opportunities in the storage industry. So that's our focus for the semester, thinking about these storage facilities that we see around Dallas-Fort Worth and other places. The key issue, the central focus here, we want to identify the best possible locations for storage center development. Where should these places go? Obviously, they're in a bunch of places already. What about new ones? What are the opportunities for new growth in this industry? They want to keep on growing. Where should they go to do that? So where do we see storage facilities like the one that we're seeing here in this picture? What kinds of locations? What cities are they in? What's the closest one to UNT? Do we have any in Denton? Think about that. Reflect on that. indeed, really more generally, what's the industry all about? Who are their customers? What do they do? What awareness do you have of the storage industry in particular? Those are all things I'd like you to think about. So ponder on that as we go along. Here is a map of the storage facilities in Denton. So this is public storage plus its competitors. We can see there's a definite pattern. They're not spread equally across the area. There's clusters, there's places with more, and there's places with less. So I'd like you to consider that as a little bit of background, at least to start your thinking. So really the primary question, the big focus here, identifying best potential locations for storage facility development in regional markets of peak interest to Vaquero. So I guess a little bit of an aside. You're going to get more information on this as we go along. But one little aside here is that they're going to identify specific regions of the United States that they want you to focus on. And we're going to divide up that list of regions. I think there will be something like 4 or 5 or 6 regions that you will have to choose from. And we'd like someone on each, at least one person or one student group on each of the regions that Vaquero identifies. So within the region, so not the whole country, but within the region that you get assigned to you, that you choose, where are the best potential locations for this kind of development? So that's the central focus question. And we're going to develop that more in the days ahead in this class, but I wanted to alert you to that general idea as we're starting here. And there is a twist on top of that. That's what you've heard so far is the main part of the project, but there is a related secondary problem that I want you to also consider that Vaquero is very interested in you addressing. So let's look at this. The related issue is that with a lot of these facilities, not all of them, but with a lot of them, there are other companies that find it advantageous to locate themselves next to a storage facility. So you might find a storage facility and next door, or between the storage facility and the main road going by, you might find another business. Who would that be? Can you think of any examples? This is a focus for a secondary part of the analysis here. So for each site you identify in the region that you have selected, for each of those sites you identified as best for storage facility development, what complementary business land uses can you also identify? What should go there given the site and given the location, the market around that particular site? So I'd like you to think a little bit about the meaning of that even. What are we getting at with that question? So to help you focus, we're not going to leave it wide open for you. We're going to give you a short list. I think something like 5 businesses, 5 complementary retail and service businesses that you should focus on. And is there one or more of them from that short list that you would find as advantageous to locate near or next to a public storage or a storage facility of any kind? So that's the overall challenge. There's a primary focus, a secondary focus, and on top of that, I just want to give you a little bit of overview of the landscape in terms of the schedule that you'll be following. There's a couple of phases that you need to be aware of. You're going to work on one phase first and then the second phase after. Hope that makes sense. So 2 major phases. What are the phases? Phase 1. I'm calling this a storyboard proposal, and I will define what a storyboard is as we get into the class as well. So the storyboard proposal states the problem and defines the goals for the analysis, summarizes the relevant methodologies and the data sets, the data needs for the project. So the end result, the thing that you're aiming for, the thing that you'll have at the end of phase 1, that you should be able to identify yourself and say, yes, that's what I've got, is an overall plan. What is your plan for getting the job done? What things do you need to do? Are there steps involved? Do you need to do one thing first and then another? How can you break that down? And so that is the plan that involves the problem, goals, methodologies, data, all of that. And that is due on March 9th. So you've got a bit of time, but you don't have forever. So you need to get working on that very soon. So that's phase one. Let's do, first of all, partway through the semester. So again, just to kind of cycle around to what we're talking about here, what do we mean? I want to state this as clearly as possible. Phase one is a proposal where you plan the analysis. Phase one, proposal, plan the analysis. Phase two is results, where you've done the analysis. You do the analysis in phase two. So you don't do the analysis in phase one. Phase one is all about a plan. Phase two is about doing it. So that also means that phase two doesn't include a whole lot of information about what the plan was. It's more about the results. But we'll get into that more as we go along. So that's an overview of the landscape. I hope that makes sense, and I'm happy to talk with you as you have need for clarification, because I know this is complicated stuff. Again, back to the project, kind of a little bit more of setting the landscape, the context. What are we getting at here? What is the project? What is Vaquero's interest in the class completing this particular project? Why do they care? Why are they working with us? They want to support you as you develop as business geographers. They employ business geographers. They are eager to see more business geographers come out, because there's a good likelihood they're going to need to hire more, because the ones they've got are doing a great job. We'll circle around to that in just a minute. But they want to support your development. They want to help us to educate business geographers. And so that's the primary motivation. Another motivation along the way is they want good ideas. And they see our class as having a creative possibility where we can come up with something from an outside perspective. We're not in their company. We haven't been thinking about the same things and doing the same things they have. We might have a different perspective, and we probably do. They just want to see what we come up with, if there's anything that they could leverage from our work there. So all of this kind of also leads to this point about back to education. They care about your education more than you might suspect. And what do I mean by that? There's a class connection. Our class is connected directly to Vaquero. Their GIS director, Laura, their lead GIS analyst, Kevin, are UNT geography graduates, or actually Kevin is going to be a graduate. He's a current student, but he's advancing through his program. So Laura and Kevin have a connection here. And in fact, this is the coolest thing I think about this. They took the class that you are in now last year, and they got their positions at Vaquero. Very nice, very good positions, very interesting positions, very well paid positions. They got their positions as a result of taking this class. So think about that. That's a possibility for anyone in here, because there's more people that need people like them. And so that's coming out of the class, and that also kind of explains, oh, why do they care about your education? Well, your education is their education, and they want you to do well, just like other people helped them to do well. So that's all about that. One more project factor, and then we'll wrap things up. A key to project success is data. Getting good information on all of the context, the elements of importance to storage facilities as businesses. We need data. We need to provide results and advice that's based on evidence. That's what we're getting at. That's really the point of business geography and location intelligence, is being able to do that. So let me just put this question out here, just as something to ponder. Of course, you're watching this on video, so no need to answer me right now, but are there data fields? Are there data types? Are there things that you would like to look up about communities and locations? We'll talk more about business and GIS and business needs and analytics as we go along, but if you have any familiarity at all with census type data or community type data, are there things that you think would be helpful to have a database on to pursue this project. And if it's too early for you, if you're not really understanding where this question's coming from, don't worry about it. We're going to work on answers. But for the people in the class who've got some idea of GIS and data, let me put this out there. Are there particular variables, particular fields that you think could be useful? If you could get that kind of information, what kind of information could you get that would be useful for this? So acknowledging that data is important, Vicaro is going to help you out with some data to get started. They're not providing all of the data you need. If you try and get by on only this data, your analysis will be woefully incomplete. You'll need to get some more on your own. But this is a good starting point. Locations of major storage facilities across the United States. And there's a lot of them. Where are they? And in particular, of course, in the region that you will end up selecting, where are the storage facilities in your particular region? So they're providing names, addresses, geocode, lat long, that kind of thing, so that you can at least get a start on thinking about this as a geographic problem. So last words for now, I just want to mention, I think I said earlier, groups or individuals, both are allowed. I'm going to allow project groups of 2 students. They're not required. You can work individually. So I'm allowing you to work individually, and I'm allowing you to work in pairs, essentially. And so what I'd really like to do is get some feedback from you on your project group, if you're in one, or your choice to work on your own by Friday next week. So I'll provide a sign-up sheet that you can get back to me, just to indicate if you're pairing up, especially with someone else in the class. So that's the project breakdown. I think we covered a lot of ground there, and a lot of really useful stuff. With that project overview completed, let's turn to location intelligence again, and just consider a little bit more thoroughly the relevance and use of location intelligence, the real case for why businesses need to care about geography. I think this is important to establish right from the very start. So location intelligence as a field really emphasizes and seeks as a goal to integrate geographic analysis, reasoning, and technology. And the overall purpose, the driving goal here, is to help leaders and organizations of all kinds make better decisions. So this includes businesses, but it includes other businesses as well. Primary organizational context will be business in this course. That's in a lot of ways really easy to portray, to understand the need of business to make money, to make a profit, and we can see some really neat applications of GIS and location intelligence in that regard. But I also want us to recognize all the time that many business applications that are of use in a profit-seeking context also address needs for government and nonprofit organizations. So even where you're learning about business, you actually have a gateway to other applications as well. So given this business connection, a related term that we should cover and understand is business intelligence. So business intelligence is really well known in our College of Business and other business schools and workplaces. It's a big term, an umbrella term. It really is about identifying patterns and trends in a business's historical data, the ups and downs of a business, what can be learned from customer activity, behavior over time. So business intelligence really focuses on presenting and analyzing the results of complex data analysis in a variety of formats. There's so many potential users and decision makers within a business who can use data. And so business intelligence is fundamentally about data broadly, but not specifically spatially. And so that's where we get a little bit of a gateway for our stuff here in geography. So look at the parallel here. Focus of business intelligence is improvement of business decision making. Where did we hear about improvement of decision making? Location intelligence as well. So there's a connection. So foundation for business intelligence: raw data, multiple formats, multiple sources. It's messy. Raw data can include a whole lot of other sources and formats. We can query a database. We can mine other sources, outside sources, internal sources. It can result from analytical processing, new data being created by analysis, and visualization and reporting. So there's all of these different flexible formats that we're looking at. Business intelligence really finds a unique and powerful role in the reality that 80% of a business's raw data are geographically significant in some way. So this is, again, a tie to location intelligence, between business intelligence and location intelligence. Just thinking about this data that business intelligence is analyzing in multiple ways, but not specifically geographical ways, does actually have location components to it, overwhelmingly. And the field of location intelligence estimates that about 80%. So what does this mean? Businesses already have spatial data. They're ready to go in some ways. They're often combined with other data fields, and the other data fields are what is being analyzed often by these businesses. So what is the opportunity for geography? Businesses need tools to extract the value that exists in the data sets that include spatial information that they're not using. So I think anytime a business has an asset that it's not using, it's got to be interested in pursuing use of that asset. That's fundamental to being competitive. So spatial data analysis opens up new possibilities for understanding the whole data asset that a business has. The business already has this information. It's not like they're paying more or needing to do more. They already have it. What can they do to extract the value of that? So that's really the case right there. So again, we could think a little bit about potential sources of data, and I'll just lay out a few here. Customers provide data all the time through their orders, through their locations, through other means. The U.S. Census Bureau provides broad, national, regional, local, very micro-level data. So all sorts of information there that can be analyzed spatially. Other government departments do that as well. Businesses that don't specialize in providing data often do have data. And of course, there are commercial data providers, and we'll be covering those in this class. So I don't know, can you think of any others? It's a pretty good list, but the more flexible we can be, the better. So businesses analyze data from all of these sources because there's real value in collecting this kind of information from diverse sources. So here's a broad statement. Location adds insight and value to drive improved business outcomes. That's really what the location analyst, the location intelligence expert would say to a business. So here's what we might call a solution landscape, where it includes the contributions of business intelligence, geospatial analysis, and something that we could call data visualization, production of charts, graphs, plots, maps, all that kind of thing. And so between business intelligence and geospatial analysis and data visualization, we can see that there's a core there right in the middle that it consists of that overlap area where all three of them exist and have interest, and that's where location intelligence exists. So location intelligence sits at this crucial intersection right in between all of these three areas. So I think it's worthwhile for us to explore the value of location intelligence further. And just see where this intersection area really functions. So the value of location intelligence we can see in a number of ways. First of all, maybe just talk a little bit about applying spatial context. Just the ability to provide that spatial context in informing the responses to business opportunities. So what do I mean by this? So let's give a simple example. So here's a map of central Denton, and it's got UNT, and it's got a property for sale located at the star there. And the question, why does location information and analysis matter in a situation like this? the location really is the key to the value of that property. A different property, or even the same property, even more powerfully, let's say the same property at a different site would have a different value. So just think about this. Property number 2. What if it was the same property, the same characteristic, except located in northeast Denton, away from the university, really on the edge of the city? Now it's close to other things, but it's not close to the center, it's not close to the university. So just think about that. Spatial context. What's the context for a property or an asset? Location matters. Number 2, a second root of value of location intelligence. Capacity to organize and understand complex data. So much complex data exists out there. What can we do to sort through the noise and understand what's really going on there? So I think a good example of this is looking at an Excel table. Excel file. Here's a database of stores for the retailer JCPenney. So we can see addresses, cities, states, basically locations, and then some data associated with that. Sales at the store. See different values for different stores. When did they open? So all this information, but the key thing here is there's location data, and the other key thing is I would just challenge anyone to say, well, what insight can you get from a database like that? Can you glance at that? Can you look at that and give me an overview of what's going on? What are the trends? What are the key things to pay attention to? In a table form, that's really tough to do. But if we map the database, if we locate those stores, and then we analyze the sales by stores in that map format, very often actionable and important patterns crop up. So that's another contribution. A third value of location intelligence. Organize business data to reveal relationship of location to other elements in the business environment of interest. People, events, business transactions, facilities, and assets. So let's just look and see what this means. Key elements on this map here. The focus of the map is really with the red symbols, the distribution centers, but also we see little black stars that are actual stores for JCPenney. So the focus, the key elements on the map are the stores and the distribution centers, essentially the warehouses that supply the stores. Are there relationships that are revealed there? Well, I think if you think about this, if you look at this for any length of time, you'll see that there's some stores that are very close to a distribution center, got good access. There's other stores that are far away. And each distribution center, by nature, has an area that it serves. So these are a couple of insights that we could draw out, and we could use geographic analysis to actually define territories for each one of these distribution centers and identify the stores that are best served by their closest distribution center. So we can divide up territories, and this provides information for more analysis. We could analyze store performance by distribution area. All sorts of possibilities pop up with this. So the summary statement for what we've been talking about today is really this. Geographic analyses and representations of complex phenomena provide insights that can be seen in no other way. That is the core statement of what geography does for business and other organizations. So let's have a look at a roadmap for the next 3 weeks. Overall, what's happening in this course? This course provides an applied overview of advanced location intelligence applications, really unpacking the things that we were talking about in a very introductory way today. So that's the goal. How do we get there? In order to get there, we need to build some fundamental concepts. And number one, that includes foundational ideas about cities and businesses and what is possible in geographic analysis. So I want to do that right off the start in this course. So that's number one. Number two, location intelligence and GIS in a business context. And we're going to see that in a real way in our first business GIS lab that'll be happening in week 3. And then after that, we'll be understanding key data management and acquisition problems and issues getting into the guts, and again, really in a foundational way, what are some issues that relate to the practice of location intelligence. So that's the course. That's some relevance and an overall look at what we're doing this semester, including that crucial project. So I'm looking forward to seeing you next week and throughout the semester as we develop these themes and provide you with some really good skills. So thanks for being here. Take care.